Squint.
This following video is sponsored by Manscaped. Now, not many of you know this, but when Eddie Butler famously said,
if he kicks this, he can shave whichever part of his body he wants.
He was actually recommending Manscaped's Lawnmower 4.0 to Gavin Henson, wanting Supergav to take note of the waterproof trimmer's advanced skin-safe technology, keeping your skin fresh, safe, cut-free, and cordless charging functions. In fact, Eddie tried to recommend the entire performance package 4.0 right here, moments later.
Fantastic! Oh, shave away, Gavin, shave away!
And now, if you want to be as smooth as Gavin, you can get 20% whole off the price, free shipping, and 2 free gifts with the Performance Package 4.0. Specifically, right, it's also these 2 free gifts, really cool free gifts, by using the offer code SQUIDGE at the link in the description. Shave away, Gavin, shave away.
Squint.
You know, despite its cultural status, Academy Awards success and box office earnings, there never was an officially sanctioned sequel to Braveheart. Because, look, I know my rugby far better than my Scottish history, so I may not be spot on here, but I'm pretty sure right after the English hordes are defeated and after they fail to take their freedom after the credits roll, Robert the Bruce just gets twatted over the head by a leak and everything crumbles in the mere face of some random Welshman. Also seems to be the case as Wales' mad witchy hoodoo over Scotland continued this weekend, the Welsh side switching humiliation for heart and soul as they kept their cool to send proud Scotland's army to think again. So, how did Wales put right what went wrong last week and manage the match? And just how big a concern should failing to back up a big win once again be for Gregor Townsend's team? There was a delightful metaphor in this opening passage, and under pressure Wales relieved some of that pressure momentarily, only for Scotland to look to pile it right on tenfold, but eventually, through some great defend and bloody mindedness, Wales become the ones to make the break and really win that passage, because the biggest step up in Wales' game this weekend was that defence. Under Warren Gatland, Wales' biggest attribute is how comfortable they were without the ball, often dominating games despite only having 30-40% possession. And Saturday was now the 3rd game under Wayne Pivac where Wales have showed they might be able to carry this trait over. When defending, centres Owen Watkin and Nick Tompkins rarely remained connected or really together. Both players organised to defend for their respective club sides, so split responsibilities for Wales. Look here, instead of returning to connect with Tompkins, Watkin runs across to organise the other side. Scotland have numbers, but Tompkins then shoots up and cuts off every option except for Harris, who Russell hits perfectly and centre a gap, but Wales trust the work rate afford such controllers here. Jack Morgan deliberately bumps Price on his way back to slow the speed Scotland can play at. Wales continue to defend pretty comfortably against what is a very good attack. Watkin and Tompkins both essentially operating in the 13 role, but from either side of the field. Unlike Josh Adams last week, these are 2 players who each have 80-odd games of professional rugby in the centres under their belt, and it's simple enough for Tompkins to spot the move here before Scotland call it, allowing Moriarty to cover it and Williams to get in and jackal on the floor as soon as the ball lands. This wasn't necessarily Scotland specific, but having 2 men organising everything without them ever overruling each other kept Wales comfortable, sorted. This was made possible thanks to the work rate of one Thomas Williams, who made an astonishing 12 tackles from scrum half. For context, right, the other 5 starting scrum halves of the Six Nations this weekend made 16 tackles between them. Instead of the traditional sweeper role or even the Faf de Klerk style shooter, whenever they're in their own half, Wales essentially deployed Williams as a 3rd centre, with Watkin and Tompkins both operating as pseudo-13s. Williams filled in as 2 separate 12s, making simple tackles, holding the line together, and when Wales needed someone, supporting bigger a few times as well. Here, he even tries to Chris Harris. It's funny because though the French defence is bigger and more fearsome, more likely to bash you backwards and win a game, it's probably going to be less effective against Scotland and Wales, who just prioritise remaining organised above being aggressive against a team whose whole game is trying to disorganise and discombobulate you. And the best example of them shutting Scotland down came at the start of the second half. Last week, Scotland constructed a brilliant try against England by using a quick line-out to set up position in midfield before flashing back to attack the locks isolated on the touchline. Darcy Graham bursting between them and creating a try for debutant here, Ben White. Last week, they did this from the kickoff. This week, Scotland looked to run pretty much exactly the same move but with a different lead-in. This is an uncharacteristically kind of terrible kick by Ali Price. It's too long and an easy mark for Reece Samet. However, that could be the plan. LRZ kicks for touch. The Scottish pack are already waiting, similar to last week. The hooker already ready. They were expecting a line-out. McInally sets on the mark to take it quickly and then launches a similar strike play. However, Ryan Elias is watching it and taps Basham into action. It's a smart piece of analysis by Wales. Check last week's example, right? By only half setting the line out, Scotland have no one in place to block any England players who want to pile through and put pressure on Price. So Wales watch for it and have their fastest forward hammer up to make Price's job 800 million times more difficult. Bigger, meanwhile, hairs up on Russell and cuts down his options. Finn ships it on, but Bigger makes sure to get his opposite number to ground so Scotland can't reset quickly. Wales know exactly exactly the play that's coming, so they abandon the system for one passage and just press Scotland backwards. Simply put, Wales look more prepared for Scotland to run this play than Scotland do, and it results in them surrendering 30 metres and hanging a kick that doesn't even reach where the line-out took place. Because Scotland could have pulled this at any point, if we look at the other line-outs across the game, Ryan Elias is constantly at the tail watching and communicating with Basham and Biggar. Here, whilst watching Russell, we can just about hear him on the ref mic shouting going off the top to Biggar. The best attacking ball is almost always at the tail, so Wales can compete safely at the back and disrupt the ball. However, Scotland will have been buoyed by Wayne Pivack's comments this week as he publicly stated his team selection will be weakened at the line-out as he's got two jumpers in the team in Adam Beard and Will Rowlands. Then comes the first Wales line-out. Scotland mark up, Wales chuck it indeed to Ross Moriarty, and then they continued chucking it to Ross Moriarty. Rowlands didn't jump once across the whole game. Wales using only Beard and Moriarty from their starting 15. Beard took exclusively simple front ball when Scotland were expecting it, knowing it could beat the opposition in the air. Moriarty then used as a bluff on more complicated moves when he throwing it to the back and so on. But this one was my favourite. Seb Davis had run onto the pitch to replace Rowlands 8 seconds earlier, and Beard caused the line out to him straight at the front straight away. Wales just disrupted Scotland at source. In last year's Six Nations, Scotland scored 18 tries, second only to champions Wales, but 12 of them came off first, second or third phase, as did both their tries in round one. It's incredibly hard to do this when the ball isn't smooth. As a sign of just how hard Wales made Scotland work, their only try on Saturday, scored in the end by Darcy Graham, stands as the biggest phase count Scotland have turned into a try across this full World Cup cycle. It begins with a brilliant fizzing ball here by Ali Price, unleashing Van der Merwe down the wing. But once he crashes into 22, this try becomes almost too fascinating to analyse. Both teams are doing a superb job of just cancelling each other out. It's really a case of the attack being exactly as good as the defence. Scotland almost opened Wales up here. Harris offloading to Hogg, but it's scrambled, and Tom Francis does a brilliant job of slowing it down. Jack Morgan then does similar next phase. Scotland just looking to create quick ball, and Wales are conceding meterage, but not allowing the ball Scotland need in order to unlock the door. Rowlands did a really nice job here, pulling Price in from the ruck, but as he dawdles back into position, Price hears the familiar call from Finn. One more phase, and then we go. Schumann tries to go in low to generate a quick ball, but Beard rattles him upwards, which means the carry takes longer and he slows the ball down a bit, but it's not long enough. Last week's two tries were about Scotland creating moments. This Saturday was about them identifying it. Historically, this has kind of been an issue for them. Scotland have only scored one try from 10 plus phases in 3 years. They're a team who tend to either lose shape or patience as it rolls on. And the only exception to this, until this Graham try, was the last minute winner out in Paris. A passage not only demanding every ounce of focus from everyone, knowing it was their only way to win the game and finish well in the Six Nations, but crucially it was masterminded by Adam Hastings, who is a 10 far happier to go long passages without the ball than Russell, which isn't a criticism of either, it's just a crucial difference in style, because Russell's eagerness to entertain is what creates the score here. He just calls it to Tuipulotu, him and Harris just buying Tompkins' attention for a full second, allowing Russell two luxuries. One, more time to wind up the pass. Two, a chance to watch Reece Zammit and see what choice he's making. Zammit actually does quite a good job of not making a decision initially, meaning hypothetically he could reach either Hogg or Graham before the try line, but when Russell does float over perfectly, it's a really terrible tackle by Zammit to go alongside an unbelievable finish by Darcy Graham. Right? I don't know who told the wee man he's Jonah Lomu in the last few weeks, but Dars has seemingly decided he's massive now, and there's nothing oppositions or the fabric of reality can do about it. In a game where they were challenged enough at source to prevent them creating Townsend's trademarked 100% scores, it's important to see Scotland learning to seize the moment and create a 50-50 opportunity that, with a little sprinkling of magic from Darcy Graham, can become a 100%er as well. The other big difference for Wales was the breakdown. Sure enough, Wales changed the back row and looked to lock over the ball far more often than last week. Jack Morgan has a superb all-round game, but his build, stocky as any international flanker, but notably shorter, gives him a superb centre of gravity for cleaning and clearing, as Ross Moriarty brought back his trademark bastardry. Missed that bastardry. This change in focus gave Wales faster, cleaner possession, which allowed them to execute as they'd hope around the field. Whilst Wales's try came eventually from the maul, it was drawn out by some lovely work by the rest of the team, made possible because of this improved breakdown work. Off this previous maul, Wales ran a really simple move that ironically would have been less effective against a lesser defence. Chris Harris has developed a reputation as one of the finest defensive players on the planet, and a big part of why is this: his little run, weave, adjust, smash. He's always in motion, keeping himself in position to shut down the attack. However, Wales weaponised this against him. The ball goes behind and Biggar has two runners with Williams looking set to fade on the outside. Harris sets off to stop this, but as the ball comes in, Williams straightens instead and Harris has to stop himself in order to make the tackle, meaning the fullback is hitting the line at full pace against a defender, stopping themselves, and it creates momentum. Reece Zammit clears out Graham, but otherwise not much ruck is needed and Wales can reload quickly. Biggar crashing it up before a phenomenal clear up by Elias keeps the ball fast. Elias is the first forward involved in the passage, but it leaves Wales light on backs once the ball gets out. So after one phase with those forwards, they relaunch right to allow them to mix it up a bit. after this. The whole passage is classic PVAC, attacking through the backs of the free up the forwards in hope by phase 4 the two are interchangeable as per here. Rees-Zammit and Tompkins doubling as forwards as a skip pass allows Biggar and Watkin to take the inside defence and free Williams down the wing. Scotland scramble and they can't finish, but it's hugely effective sequence of attack, just showing what Wales can do when they get the breakdown right. But without possession, they also did a far better job of slowing down opposition ball. Unlike Ireland and their pack full of egg knickers, Wales have a few players in their ranks who aren't experienced at the jackal, yet threw them into breakdown after breakdown, just forcing Scotland to commit forwards to the clear out, taking seconds out of play and bodies out of the attack needlessly without Wales sacrificing any of their genuine turnover threats to a lost cause they're more ready to challenge later on. Wales also put a big emphasis on the counter-ruck, looking to blow Scotland off the ball, where Rowland had a very busy game and Jonathan Davis' final contribution was brilliant, just so good to see on his 100th cap. But a word for Tom Francis, right, who I thought had one of the best games of his career on Saturday. As well as having an edge against a very good scrum, he was absolutely tireless around the park, scored a try of the season contender and became such a nuisance at these rucks, flopping and bopping and bashing and smashing until Scotland got sick of the sight of his stupid haircut. With England up next, my instinct is Wales' twists and tweaks on the own ball may be effective against the old enemy, but the breakdown work on the opposition ball might not be so much. Whereas Wales weren't so fussed about who had the ball on Saturday and retained control, next round I wonder whether they're going to really need to control territory if they're going to push England to the edge for what would be a pretty phenomenal, unexpected win. Whilst Dan Biggar labelled this
one of my best victories in a Welsh shirt,
maybe, if we're brutally honest, behind only maybe Japan in the World Cup as the most crushing loss Scotland have suffered in the last 5 years under Tooney. Last year, Scotland had excuses to hide behind in this fixture. A red card, no crowd, the game being decided in the end by a moment of individual magic by Lewis Rees-Zammit that very few players in the world could have done anything about. But this year, the equation was far more simple. Scotland put themselves in position to pull off their first win in Cardiff since 2002, and they didn't. At 17-all, 20 minutes to go, a top team, like Scotland are good enough to be, should be taking control of the game. Scotland had 9 opportunities in the Welsh half in that final quarter and blew all of them. Now, if you want to look away, I understand, but here's how. Now, 4 out of those 9 you can call great play by Wales, but 9 out of 9 are errors of execution or judgment by Scotland. The 2 errors from risky play you can forgive because taking those chances is a huge part of what's made Scotland successful, but that still leaves 7 moments to win the game that Scotland outright bungle. In those same 20 minutes, Wales get opportunities in the Scottish half 4 times. One is a similar low percentage play to Scotland's as Jack Morgan, going for the risky play that might result in a try but gets them bundled as touch. But otherwise, there's only one outright error from Wales in those closing stages, failing to protect the ball at this maul and handing it to Sam Skinner whilst pushing for the try. The other 2 passages are just smart game management. The lead up to the decisive drop goal by Dan Biggar, and then this. With 4.5 minutes to play and Wales' ball slowing right down, Biggar looks to manage the clock with a really smart kick. The 2 best chasers, Rees-Zammit and Williams, are after it, but it lands deliberately inside the 22, meaning either Wales regather it or Scotland call the mark. It takes Hogg almost 30 seconds to take the free kick, meaning the Welsh defence is set and Biggar's placed it so Hogg has no angle to work with. He's just kicking the ball back to Wales and allowing Biggar here to try and pin them back in their own half. No points may be scored, but this is smart game management by Biggar and eats a whole minute off the clock. The drop goal itself also really nicely consumed almost 3 minutes, as well as giving Biggar an easier shot at the points than the penalty he was previously presented with. Now, Liam Williams led the charges saying Wales should have looked for a try, but the irony is, he's the main reason they bloody no longer could. It was no longer on. Wales maybe have a chance to score a try here, but Williams stewards the ball and takes it in. By the time it's recycled, this is closed off entirely. So Biggar wisely takes the chance while it's in front of him. Takes a really easy 3 points for the lead. Test rugby is all about taking opportunities, and this is an inspired piece of captaincy to overrule everyone and win the game for Wales. The real irony, however, is a 17-all scoreline is exactly what Scotland were presented with last week, and in that game, Finn Russell took control. You think of yellow cards' main impact being narrowing the defensive line, but without Russell, Scotland looked largely rudderless. Blair Kinghorn's played very well at 10 for Edinburgh all season, but frankly struggled to marshal anything. Scotland looking shapeless and unthreatening for the 10 minutes he occupied the position. Really quite poor. If this Scotland team are serious about going places, they can't be so reliant on one man to mastermind their wins that him dropping out for just 10 minutes causes them to crumple against teams they should beat. You've got to wonder what Adam Hastings has done in all of this to not be worth a shot off the bench. There's an argument they're blooding a third 10 ahead of the World Cup, but is it worth it if it just costs Scotland perhaps their best shot at a first Grand Slam in 32 years? Yeah, it's a tiny margin loss, and with France headed to Edinburgh next round, Scotland very much do have their fate in their own hands. But this is, and this should be, a game that should hurt, and they should be dissecting endlessly to ensure it never happens again. Because just as that opening stanza ended with no score, no winner, nothing decided, this match very much leaves both teams level, competing, contesting, both in the hunt for the championship. Wales head next to Twickenham, then welcome France to Cardiff, knowing what they need to do in both matches to give themselves a shot at the title against Italy in the closing game. While Scotland will want a huge reaction as they head back home, determined to make Braveheart free a movie for far happier ending. Thank you for watching that. As effort, trying to cover every game from this Six Nations. I have no idea what order these are going up, so I hope you enjoy this and any previous ones that have gone up and any ones that come up very soon. There's also the podcast going on if you fancy hearing about Argentina v Italy.
Yeah, we talked about that with Connor from Wimbledon Rugby on Friday.
And there's plenty more happening, thumbing around. There's going to be more videos, going to aim to get all of them up by the weekend, and I'll see you very soon for rugby.